The most exciting thing that's going on in space right now is the rise of what we call new space. These are companies who are dedicated to opening the space frontier and are doing so by creating businesses, building spacecraft, and other entities that are going to be useful in space. In fact, the definition of a new space company to me is one that is created, founded, funded, or operated by people who believe that human settlement is the goal and that they want to get involved in a way that is profitable. That's the definition of a new space company to me. They're springing up all over the place, some of them more viable than others, but they're very exciting. It's really interesting to me that the private sector finally is getting to a point where it's going to be able to enter the space arena, and is doing so right now in the form of the new space companies in a way that may actually lever us off the planet. I saw a chart a couple of years ago that Elon Musk of SpaceX was showing, and he was actually talking about something different, but right in the bottom of the chart there was a little bullet, and he was talking about the plans of his company, and that little bullet said, SpaceX begins servicing Bigelow Space Station. Bob Bigelow being the guy who's building an orbital space facility. And then he just, Elon kept talking, going on to the next slide. And at the end, I stopped, I raised my hand, and I said, Elon, that bullet on the fourth slide there that said you start servicing, the Bigelow Space Facility, do you realize that's potentially the most important moment in human history? I said, well, what do you mean? I said, at that point, you will have private transportation systems going to private destinations in the development of the first off-planet economy, from which the profits will be used to grow that economy larger and larger, and the human race will at last be on the first permanent path into space and opening the frontier. It's the breakout. That's when it happens. At the point that private transportation is carrying people and goods and services to and from private destinations, we've got a space economy, and the baby has been born. That begins in Leo, and we begin moving out. We go to the moon. We begin replicating those systems, those economic systems, those transportation systems, using our understanding that we've learned in Leo, working our way out behind the Lewis and Clarks of our government, beginning to follow them with the settlers and the shopkeepers, as it were. And from there on, everything begins to happen. If one looks at the interaction between the private and public sectors when it comes to space, it doesn't necessarily have to be antagonistic. It can be quite complementary if we do things in the right way. And one of those things is, that occurred to me was when I look at the Old West here in North America. If one looks at the way some frontiers have been handled in the past, it's very interesting because what would happen would be a government entity would send out a government force, a military force or whatever, to build a fort beyond its borders. They would build that fort beyond their borders at the far edge of their domain, secure a transportation system to and from that government entity, and they would then carry their supplies to and from in the most expensive way at first. Eventually, they start buying from locals or others around them who begin clustering around the fort. Those people then begin using that secure and safe transportation system that goes back to the more civilized areas to export the goods that they've developed, caught, captured, built, whatever, on that frontier, and start using that transportation system to export back to civilization. Cut to 100 years later, what have you got? Here in North America, what you have is the ruins of a government fort in the middle of a thriving metropolitan area. In other words, it's a catalyzing function. It's government actually catalyzing the frontier by helping establish an area within which it is safe and the people are able to act and interact, and then securing a transportation system that then gradually gets taken over by the private sector. And that is how you begin to open the frontier. There's a concept I've been looking at regarding how to build things on the moon, and it applies in a lot of different ways, and it's called catalytic contingency contracting. Catalytic contingency contracting involves using the government dollars to leverage and catalyze the private sector. For example, what you might do is you might say, look, we want a habitat on the moon that'll hold 10 people. And we're going to put out a prize or a challenge to the private sector for the first company that can take 10 people, stick them in a habitat that they build in the middle of the Arizona desert somewhere, and keep them alive for 6 months or 12 months, with certain rules regarding input and output and how much food goes in, how much energy they can use, etc. Some standardized rules. Oh, and we're going to give 2 prizes, by the way, to the 2 companies that do it best because, well, we want competition. We don't want somebody who feels they've got an entitlement to do all the government habitats. So at the end of a year or 2, you've got 2 companies that show they can do that. Oh, and by the way, we're going to give you extra money if you add, let's say we need 10,000 square feet to operate in for our facility. We're actually going to pay you a little extra to throw in 2,000 or 3,000 extra square feet, and you can use that for whatever you want. Along the way, if you get this deal from us, the U.S. government, to build our facility on the moon, we're going to let you use the NASA logo in any advertising that the rest of your company does. If you're a housing company or whatever, you can use it in all of your ads, absolutely free, and you could say you're the company that builds outposts on the moon. We are going to guarantee you for 10 years that we're going to lease 10,000 square feet of that facility, and you can use that extra 2,000 for anyone you want, who, by the way, can travel to and from your facility tax-free. Oh, and anything that you create in that extra 2,000 square feet that you export back to the Earth, we're not going to tax. And in fact, we won't tax the profits that you make in building the facility for us, creating sort of a tax-free zone out of this. You put all of these things together, and what you start to do is lower the financial risk for any company that might want to do this. You lower the giggle factor, and you add all of these things together, and eventually you're getting a package that you, the person in charge of that division in your company, can take to your board of directors and say, you know what, we want to bid on this. And oh, by the way, at the end of that 10 years, it's yours, and you can do anything you want with it. We'll write it, we'll guarantee it, it's yours. Because, well, we're NASA. We're a lean, mean exploration machine, and we're not going to hunker down again. We're going on to Mars. It's all yours.